Want to keep your dollars and cents? Then download the Sense app from the Office of Financial Readiness. That's Sense, S-E-N, money sign, E, to save for retirement, build credit, create a spending plan, or buying a home. You can't do any of those things without money. So if you have sense, you'll download the Sense app. That's S-E-N, money sign, E, today. And be sure to follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And welcome to Military Matters Fast Take. I'm Rod Rodriguez. With me is, of course, Jack Murphy. Jack, today we're talking about the last episode that you did about vampires, werewolves, and Nazis.
Yeah, and the occult. It's a huge subject, but we were lucky to get Eric Kurlander on the show to discuss it, who is a historian of German history. Really did a lot of research for his book, Hitler's Monsters, on the Nazis and the occult.
That was the guy that got to edit this episode, put it together. And as I was listening to it, fascinating material, because I think most people, anybody who's seen a Indiana Jones movie knows that there was this fascination of the occult, of biblical lore that the Nazis had with, the Ark of the Covenant, Spear of Destiny. I mean, it's been on all of these movies. But what I was really fascinated by was the description of werewolves, the description of vampires, the belief in astrology, and this very weird take on Christianity and Jesus through this strange Nordic lore lens. Like Jesus was a Nord, essentially, like a Nordic guy in the Middle East. Like I didn't know that they really believed this at the time.
Well, I mean, there were a number of different pseudoscience and occult beliefs that various people in Germany espoused, right? So it's not that there was one unified theory. There's all sorts of different wild ideas being touted about in Germany at this time. And yeah, one of them was that Jesus was not a Jew, but he was an Aryan. And there was a concerted effort made by some of the Nazi elite to almost create this sort of pan-Aryan philosophical framework that interestingly encompassed not just what we would think of as like Scandinavia, but also going into the Arab world, going into Nepal, Tibet, India, and places like this as well, and trying to recast all of them as being from some sort of Aryan bloodline. And what they were trying to do there exactly, I suppose, is up for debate, but one could argue that they were trying to form the basis of a much larger empire for their 1,000-year Reich.
One of the things that I was surprised from this episode was I was expecting a story about Hitler looking for relics, again, like Indiana Jones. I thought we were going to find out that Hitler was trying to create werewolf soldiers, or kind of like the video games of today, Nazi zombies, something in that realm. But what we found was a story of a country desperately in need of some type of identity, and that they turned to a man who used the occult and beliefs and religion and mixed it in with his own brand of fascist politics. Quite different from what I anticipated.
I think that one of the biggest takeaways, maybe the big takeaway from Eric's book, is not that, Himmler and some of the other, Nazi cronies were involved in the occult. I think people kind of know that at this point. I think the big takeaway was that pseudoscience, astrology, the occult, Volkish mythology, all these different things were already on the rise in Weimar Germany, that they had widespread public appeal. And that was part of what made people susceptible. As you said, the Nazis took in things like the Thule Society and all these different occulted beliefs and blended it with their fascist politics as a way to draw in a larger audience, to create a big tent sort of conspiracy, just like what we see today with QAnon. There are some dangerous and concerning comparisons to be made there. But what's interesting with the Nazis is that Germany at that time was in such dire straits. They had just come out of a failed war. There was widespread unemployment, superinflation. The economy had collapsed. There were all of these things that happened that had put Germany in a very bad position. And what the Nazis did is they came around and they used magical realism, really. They said, we're rejecting this reality because we don't like it, and we're inventing a complete parallel reality that we prefer to live in. And that kind of worked for them. Not that they were able to create their Aryan paradise, but it worked in the sense that it drew people to the Nazi party and facilitated their rise to power.
So that leads me to, I guess, the big question for me. I listened to the episode, folks. If you get a chance, go listen to this one because there's a lot to unpack. I'm going to ask a very unfair question to you, Jack, but based on your hour plus with Dr. Kurlander reading the book, you've already hinted at the QAnon tie-in, but I guess the big question here is there a tie-in? Is that what Dr. Kurlander is hinting at? Like, are there some similarities that he's concerned about?
Yeah. And one of the things I first spoke to Eric about right off the bat, I don't think it's in the interview. I don't think we were even recording at the time, but I said, as I was reading your book, I was watching that guy, Lindell, the My Pillow guy, and he's holding his cyber rally, his cyber symposium, where he's up on stage saying that the election was stolen from Donald Trump. And he has like computer code up on the screen and quote unquote cyber experts, and they're doing this big presentation, and it's all very, it is a sort of technological shamanism, a sort of cyber occultism that the average person doesn't even know what this code is or what it means. These like boomers, these 60, 70-year-old women who are in the audience. So he's able to project whatever he wants into it. And yeah, there are cybersecurity experts and voting machine experts come out and say, this is total nonsense. This doesn't make any sense. But people are going to choose what to believe. And you have up on stage this sort of technological shaman telling you exactly what you want to hear. So that's what's concerning, is that we do live in an era where there are people trying to promote this sort of like magical thinking, that they're rejecting the reality, the pragmatic, objective reality that we're being presented with, and trying to replace it with fantasies where a CIA server farm in Germany was raided by, commandos, American commandos, a fantasy where there are these, child molesting elites gathering adrenochrome from children, where there are, coded messages being put out by, some guy named Q that we can decode and learn hidden messages from. There is that sort of magical thinking increasingly in American politics, and more people are buying into it. I've been talking about this for years now, particularly seeing veterans and military personnel affected by it. But I mean, look, I go to pick up Chinese food and there's a guy there at the counter wearing a Q hat. And on the back of it, it says, where we go one, we go all. Like this is happening in our society. This is in the fabric of our social order now. And how we put the genie back in the bottle, if it even can be, is a question that we're going to have to grapple with.
That makes me concerned. And I was surprised. And, that was the thing that my takeaway was very similar to your description, the tie-in, the similarities between what we're seeing with some of this QAnon stuff, this idea that politics is becoming a spiritual battleground,
And the big difference, I mean, the pandemic obviously really affected people's minds in a lot of different ways. But the thing we have going for us in America is our economy has held together. Now, imagine if we experienced an economic depression like Germany did after during that time frame, you would see some really nasty things come out in American politics.
Desperation. People would be desperate to hold on to their power, give people something hope.
Desperate for a new narrative. Make America great again. How are we going to do that?
I do want to give the folks on the right some credit in that you can believe in making America great again without buying into, satanic cabals eating children. I know a lot of folks that are very involved in their political, in the political action groups, in the political realm, where they sincerely believe that Donald Trump or whoever is on the right that they believe in is a good candidate because of the political ideas that they hold. But I think that there's a point where the left is even guilty of this, where the left may not necessarily ascribe so much in religion, but there is this desire for fervor. People want to be desperately ingrained in believing something, whether that's communism, socialism. They're just so wrapped up in this belief that all capitalism is evil and any pursuit of personal wealth is indicative of your character and your unethical state of personal beliefs and whatnot. I'm concerned that the country is leaning in two different ways, and they're leaning super hard. I'm feeling the death of moderates. That's what I feel a lot is that it's not cool to be a moderate anymore. It's not okay to shake hands with the other guy. If you do, you're a traitor and you should be thrown out into the wolves. We saw that with different political parties throwing out long-held, respected members of the political group simply because they would not back or support their main guy. And it's true on both the left and the right. We're slowly becoming the chasm between left and right is becoming deeper and deeper. I wonder how this belief in the occult, this desire for the fantastic, how this is going to play in American culture in the next couple of years.
Yeah, as do I. And I think it's probably going to get worse.
I will say that one of the pieces of feedback that we got was from Chelsea Weber Smith, and she is the host of American Hysteria, another very popular podcast. She was reading his book, Dr. Kurlander's book, for her own show, and one of her thoughts was on astrology, and she was very surprised at how much astrology had to play in the Nazi occult belief system. And I think it's interesting because, like, we can look at astrology today and it's in the newspaper. It's, there's still you can still look up your zodiac sign and read your fortune. But, I can't help but to look at Facebook sometimes and it's like, answer this questionnaire and find out what your full thing on your Pisces is, or your Libra, or your Sagittarius, whatever. Maybe I'm making a stretch here, man. But I look at social media. And I look at some of these questionnaires and I look at some of this interest in the occult and I look at the interest in astrology. And now we're all looking to the stars for aliens. And now I'm seeing, we did a couple of episodes on aliens. And I can't help but to look at the ancient aliens and the zodiacs and astrology and the American zeitgeist. And I can't help but to wonder if we're watching it slowly happen, like this melding of religion, science, and politics.
Yeah. And with the advent of AI, talk about technological shamans, we're all going to worship, as the cult of the machine god. It's going to be wild times coming, man. But I think with Eric said was really interesting was that stuff you see on the History Channel today, this stuff about ancient aliens, where there's this super race of an advanced civilization that then fell because their society degraded somehow. Like that is one for one Nazi occult beliefs. That's what they believed. That's exactly what they believed. And that's just mainstream now. That's just mainstream on television every day. And as another friend of mine, a analyst named Jade Parker, she pointed out that you've been playing conspiracy theory shows on the Learning Channel and the History Channel and everything else for the last 20 years. Everything is about JFK assassinations and Roswell and ancient aliens. Like, no wonder why people believe all this crazy stuff now in 2021. I mean, they've grown up with it now.
I mean, there's this whole, I believe there was an actual show on History Channel about Hitler and the occult. I could be mistaken. I'm not very but I feel like I've seen a show either on the History Channel or one of these about Hitler and or the Nazis and the occult. And that's where I thought this episode was going to go. I thought this episode was heading in that direction of like why Hitler was trying to find the Spear of Destiny, or, you know, why he was trying to find the Ark of the Covenant, one of the more popular Indiana Jones-esque ones. But instead, we ended up learning a little bit more about ourselves and finding the deeper meaning behind some of these myths, this lore. I mean, we can't.
Another takeaway from it is that Hitler was not all that interested in the occult. Like it wasn't really his thing. It was something he had a passing interest in, but for him, it was more seen as, this is something I can use. That I see that people are interested in this. They're interested in spiritualism and astrology and dowsing and all of these sorts of odd occulted beliefs. And he saw this as something I can use as a vehicle for my political party.
Well, it kind of goes back to rewriting history, doesn't it? I mean, it just seems cooler to have a Hitler who was interested in werewolves and vampires and the Ark of the Covenant. That seems more fun. That makes history more interesting. When we say that Hitler wasn't into any of that, really, he's kind of iffy on it. More like it was a tool used by other people to bring people in. That's not fun. In fact, that's mildly depressing, because we have this idea of what might have been. The films, the video games, we have this idea, we have this image in our heads that Hitler wanted alien technology, UFOs, and the occult and spiritual relics. And I think maybe part of it is that means if Hitler wanted it, that has to mean it's real. Right? Like if we're looking at this psycho of our history that killed millions of Jews and his, you know, quote unquote undesirables, a monster like this who had such an impact on the world, if he wanted UFOs, if he wanted alien technology that was in the North Pole, and he wanted the Spear of Destiny, and he wanted werewolves, and he believed this stuff, then maybe it exists. Maybe there are aliens in the North Pole that he was sending Nazi scouting parties to go after. Maybe there is an Ark of the Covenant in Ethiopia that he was sending Nazis to go after. That means our world is freaking cool, Jack. That means we have aliens and spiritualism and angels and demons, and that's kind of cool.
Yeah, making reality as if it was that Wolfenstein video game from back in the day is much more interesting and exciting than the sad reality of, you know, the Holocaust and the horrible human toll of the Second World War. So I guess I can understand from that perspective that it's a much funner to delve into the fantastic.
Yeah, and I think that that's the part that harsh reality that you just brought up. It's the Holocaust. You're not going to find very many. I'm sure there are some video games where the world of taste is somewhat subjective, but you're not going to find too many video games where you're acknowledging Auschwitz. We're acknowledging what human beings endured for years under a brutal fascist regime where, there were these death camps, literal death camps. I think, I think the further we unfortunately, so many of our veterans from World War II are passing away. So many survivors of the Holocaust are passing away. That people, have you seen that flag of the vaccines shaped like a Nazi flag? Oh yeah, they take a couple of syringes, they turn it into a swastika, and there's a lot of comparison to the vaccine to Nazi Germany, and everyone's very quick to like, it's just Nazism all over again. And I'm like, guys, go talk to a survivor. Go talk to a survivor of the Holocaust. Ask them how closely this resembles their experience. I think, and I get it. People will argue like, well, it's the beginnings and blah, blah, blah. I think we got to be careful. I think this country just needs to take a chill, relax a little bit, acknowledge some reality that Dr. Kurlander, I think, is hinting at, that maybe what we think is exciting and interesting might be the bad medicine. It might be bad juju to take down. Just be careful what you're thinking, what you're accepting.
I've been saying and writing for years now that I've been concerned with the number of veterans I've seen getting interested in QAnon and going down that rabbit hole. And the number of veterans I see, this blows my mind, but openly talking about like civil war and salivating at the idea of turning their guns on their fellow Americans. It's horrifying. And like when I point it out to them, they're like incredulous that I would even like point it out to them. Like, this is batshit crazy. Like, what are you doing right now?
And again, I know you pointed out at QAnon, but I will say that there's also this idea of a glamorization of civil war from the left. I've seen Antifa people, doing videos where they're like running around the woods with, guns, and they're like, we're ready to fight the fascists. And it's like,
they are out there,
guys.
And I would just point out, I mean, I would be perfectly happy to report on that stuff too. I just have not seen too many left-wing veterans doing that, because I focus on veterans and military issues. And so maybe that's where my perspective is somewhat skewed. But I have not seen left-wing veterans like training Antifa to in like combat or anything. Like maybe it exists, and it would be a huge story. If you have any tips, hit us up. I just haven't seen it yet.
All right, folks, that's I think we're going to call this a wrap. I think this is a good fast take. We're actually under an hour for a fast take, so there's a plus, folks. You're welcome. We actually made a fast take relatively fast. But seriously, if you have any comments or feedback about this episode about vampires, werewolves, Nazis, and the occult, or if you have a tip, if you are a veteran who's interested in training Antifa people, or you're on the other side of this QAnon fence, but you think that there's going to be a violent rise, we want to hear from you. Like, I want to explore all angles here. We're not a political show. I know some of you may not believe that. I know we've taken our shots at QAnon, but to Jack's point, they are a very vocal group. They are all over social media and Twitter, Antifa as well. But I have yet to meet a veteran. I personally have yet to talk with a veteran who is riding on the Antifa bandwagon. I have yet to meet a vet who is out there who believes wholeheartedly in this foreseeable or inevitable civil war between fascists and anti-fascists.
I actually have known a few veterans who joined Antifa, and
I don't know any.
But they were not advocating violence, but they definitely went off the deep end from my perspective.
Stay in shallow waters, folks. I think that's stay in shallow waters. All right. Anyways, I'm Rod Rodriguez. That was Jack Murphy. This is Military Matters. You can always find us at stripes.com. Make sure that you're listening and subscribing, and share this podcast. We grow by word of mouth, folks. So make sure you are sharing this podcast with everybody in your particular network. We will see you at the next episode. Did you know that the Office of Financial Readiness has an app? Download Sense app. That's SEN $E. Sense app has the information you need for saving for retirement, building credit, creating a spending plan, or buying a home. FinRed has the tools you need. Download Sense app for tips on the go and follow at DoD FinRed on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.